Alright, my super students, we're Algebra 2, Module 1, Unit 3, and now Lesson 7. We're almost to the end. We're going to solve equations with radicals for several days here. You guys, I think, will be very good at this, so hang in there and enjoy the ride. Alright, first up we have x squared of x minus 6 equals 4. And I kind of already did the stuff through it, but I want to talk you through it in that. Bottom line is our first step, if we're dealing with it, is isolate the variable. So number 1, isolate the variable. So let's see what we got here. Isolate the variable. Okay, so what that means is we move this 6 to the other side. So I add 6 to both sides, and therefore our square root of x is all by itself, and you get square root of x equals 10. Okay. Next, what you got to do is once you've got the radical isolated, you want to square both sides. So we're going to square both sides. Why do we do that? Because you're taking the square root of x, and opposite of square root we've talked about before is squaring. So therefore, if I square both sides, you put a little square there and a square there. That's how you got to the next step. So you got x equals 100. Obviously, you then, from that point on, you will solve for your variable, solve fully. In this case, it's already done for us. We know the answer is 100. And your fourth thing is always check to make sure your answer works. It might seem reasonable, but there are cases you're going to run into where you thought it worked and it really doesn't, so check. Obviously, in this case, I take the square root of 100. Minus 6 has to equal 4. Square root of 100 is 10. 10 minus 6 equals 4. And of course 4 equals 4. So our check works, no problem. Alright, you look at the second example. Now I've got a cubed root here of x minus 6 equals 4. So the one thing we'll have to do is talk about it. In this case, it won't be squaring when we get to that second step. But same steps occur here again. I have to first add 6 to both sides, and that's what they're showing. You add 6 to both sides, you get the cubed root of x, is equal to 10. And then undoing the cubed root would be squaring a square root, or the squaring a square root, cubed root, you cube. So cubed root will cancel, these things cancel, and you get just x out of it. And when you do 10 times 10 times 10, 10 cubed, you get 1,000. Once again, check your answer. If I do the cubed root of 1,000, I get 10. 10 minus 6 does equal 4, so I'm not going to bother with that. But you get the idea, okay? So that's all we're doing on that. We're going to obviously get a little harder, so let's go on and move on. Okay, next two, very similar. Same type of situation here. I'm going to minus 6 from both sides. Feel free to pause the video and try it yourself first, and then just come back and see what I'm doing. I get the square root of 6 equals negative 2. And then I have to square both sides, So the square and the square root cancel. I get x equals, and when I square the negative 2, I get 4. Seems pretty good, right? So let's go to the check. I take the square root of 4 plus 6 equals 4. The square root of 4 is 2. What's 2 plus 6? 8. Hold on. 8 does not equal 4. Okay? So I have no solution here, which should actually make sense if you think about it, right? You can only take the square root of a positive, because we said we can't deal with it. You would have no real roots if it was negative. And I already have 6. How can I get something, I'm taking the square root of something that's going to be a positive answer, and I add it to 6 and actually go lower? Not going to happen, is it? So that's where this check comes into play. Take a look at the next one right there, number 4. Same thing. Let's see what they got there. Negative 6. Negative 6 from both sides. So now I get the cubed root of x equals negative 2. So what do I have to do? Cube both sides. Remember, you're cubing both. Okay, and then the cube of the cube root cancels. I get x equals, and when I cube a negative 2, I get negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4 times negative 2 is a negative 8. And you're like, whoa, hold on for a minute, Mr. O. We can't do the negative under the radical. This is going to have no solution too. Well, let's take a look at the check here. Let's talk about this. You got the cubed root of x. In this case, we're going to put a negative 8 on the radical. Plus 6 equals 4. Now the nice thing is, you're right, we can't take the square root of a negative. However, this is not the square root of a negative, it's a cubed root of a negative. And cubed roots, Mr. Wynn would have told you in class, or one of us, that you can't necessarily, you can do this and get some negatives. So think about what number times itself gives you -8. And voila, if you said -2, that's true, because -2 times -2 is +4, but times another -2, it is -8. So I actually do turn this thing into -2. And what's -2 plus 6? 4. 4 equals 4. Bingo. Check works. Answer is good. Okay? So we're all set there. This one, no solution back here. All right? All right. So, moving on. All right, as in the others, if you want to pause and try these on your own as you're working along, that's fine, or just walk along with me. Here's the deal here. I once again have this kind of square root of 3x plus 5, getting more complicated. A -2 equals -1. I have to deal with the square root, but before I can deal with it, I have to get rid of that. So I have to add 2 to both sides first. If you don't, you're going to make life so much more difficult on yourself. So I get the square root of 3x plus 5 equals 1. And of course I got a square root here, right? How do we undo it? We said we square both sides. So I'm going to square both sides. Radicals cancel with the square, so I get just 3x plus 5 equals 1. I'm sure you're feeling much better about solving these now. Subtract 5 from both sides. Subtract 5. 3x equals what? A -4. And divide by 3. Not a fabulous answer there. I get -4/3 is what my answer turns out to be. So, should go back and check it. If I take the square root of 3 times a -4/3, okay, plus a 5 under the radical, does that indeed equal, oh sorry, -2, my bad, I'm running out of room here. Does that equal -1? Well, when I do this and I'm multiplying, you know that those cancel there. So I've got the square root. We can bring this over here. -4 plus 5 under the radical. -2 on the outside. Does that equal -1? Well, this gives me the square root of 1. -2, does that equal -1? Square root of 1 is 1. 1 minus 2, does that equal -1? And of course 1 minus 2 is -1. It does work, so bingo, that's it, and that is our answer, -4/3. Okay, down to the bottom one here, same type of situation. This one doesn't have that little 2 to bring over. I'm ready right away. It's just a radical only, so what do you got to do? Correct, square both sides. So you get 2x then minus 3 equals 121. Add 3 to both sides. So you get 2x equals 124. Cut it in half. And according to this, my answer is 62. Okay? Go for the check. Square root of 2 times 62 minus 3. Does that equal 11? You get the square root of 124 minus 3. Does that equal 11? Square root of 121. Does that equal 11? And sure enough, it does. It works. So our answer was good. All right? Getting the hang of it, I think you're going to feel much more comfortable with this than some of the other stuff we've done over this entire unit here, especially those rational expressions and adding, subtracting, facts. So let's move on. I think I got another example or so for you. All right, as always, go ahead and, if you want, try it on your own and then check with me. Pause the video and come see what I did. All right, I'm adding 9, first of all, to both sides. Square root of x plus 5 equals -3. Square both sides. So I get x plus 5 equals +9. Move my 5 over, and my answer says, hey, it's 4. Go back and do the check here. Square root of 4 plus 5 minus 9. Whoops, I should have ignored that here. Let's get an eraser here, and I'll get rid of some of this up there. Okay, back to writing. Minus 9 has to equal -12. This is the square root of 9. Minus 9 equals -12. Square root of 9 is 3. 3 minus 9 equal negative 12. And of course, negative 6 does not equal negative 12. So, no solution. All right, that voids it out. All right, next one right here, same thing. Pause the video if you want. I'm going to first get rid of this. We haven't seen one like this yet in the notes here, but it's negative 12 times that, right? So divide by negative 12 right away. So I get the square root of x minus 6 equals, and I can reduce 18 12, so I'd rather do that. 6 goes into both, so it's basically a negative 3/2. Okay? Obviously, to get rid of the radical, we got to square both sides, including the negative 3/2. So you're going to get x minus 6 equals negative times negative is positive 9/4. You got to square both the top and the bottom. And please leave it as the fraction. It'll be a little easier that way than dealing with the decimal. What do you have to do next? Add 6 to both sides. Add 6. So you could tell me the answer is 6 and 9/4. That's kind of bizarre. We know 4 goes into 9 twice. Well, you can go in there twice, 2 fourths. So if you want to tell me that's the same thing as 8 and 1/4, I am fine with that. You also might want to tell me and just do it this way. It's 33/4. Multiply the 8 times the 4, 32. Add the 1 on top. It's 33/4. Okay. Do the check. A little bit of a pain, but I have a feeling this thing's not going to work. But let's see what we got here. I'm going to plug in 33/4. Minus 6 equals 18. So negative 12 times the square root of, let's bust that up a little bit more, 33/4. Let's see here. Let's change 6 into 4, which is, of course, 4 times 6 is 24, so that's 24/4. Same thing as 6. Does that equal 18? And if I subtract, I get negative 12 square root of 9/4. Does that equal 18? Negative 12 times, and then 9/4, of course, is 3/2. When I take the square root, I take the square root of the top, which is 3. Square root of 4 on the bottom is 2. And when I multiply by 12, 12 goes into here 6 times, so I get a negative 6 times 3. It's a negative 18. Does that equal positive 18? And the answer is no. So, after all that, no solution. Cross that out. This is really my answer. All right. I think we got one more to go. All right, last one. We're going to turn around here right away. Nothing to move on either side, so just go ahead and square away. So I get x squared minus 5 equals 4. Add the 5 to both sides. X squared is equal to 9. And then what do I have to do? You're not used to this as much. Yeah, and how do I solve for x squared? I take the square root of both sides. Isn't that the opposite of what we're just trying to do? But it does work. That's one way. I could factor, bring the 9 over and do dots. I could do all kinds of things here. Bottom line is, square root of x squared is x, and I get plus or minus 3. So I have 2 answers into this. So it's time to check them. Let's start off with the positive 3. So 3 squared minus 5 equals 2. And, of course, that's 3 squared is 9. What's 9 minus 5? It is 4. And the square root of 4, of course, is 2. So that worked. Is anything going to change when I throw in a negative sign? Well, if you check the other one, you're doing the negative of 3 being squared minus 5. Does that equal 2? And you'll see right away what happens when I square negative 5. I actually, negative 3, I get 9 on that. Minus 5 equals 2. And I'll get the same square root of 4, so 2 will end up equaling 2 if I skip a step here. And bingo, 2 answers. We got it. It is possible. So don't go out unlimiting yourself to some of this. All right. Kudos today, guys. Kudos. I think you're going to be okay with this one. Let's run with it. See you in class.